speaking to boosting, which we're gonna like get into a little bit more now, just like with a lot of the rest of stuff we were talking about, we do have a pretty small data set that we're working with, and we've been experimenting with it in like the context of this account in particular. So a lot of these things that we say or recommendations we give are like limited to the knowledge that's just like worked for us.
Yeah, our scenario.
Yeah, it might not be the best for every single thing. Yeah, one of the big things that happened with the virality is that we definitely underestimated how much boosting was helping the account. We interpreted the data initially as most of the followers coming from the viral reel because it had so many plays and we just like couldn't tell where they were coming from. But after boosting was paused to work on some more like budget proposal stuff, we realized that it was having a much larger effect.
Yeah. Well, there was that little, when you would check follower growth in native Instagram Insights, it would say like, I don't remember the exact percentage. So let's say like 28% of followers came from boosting. And we were like, oh, so it's just we're getting most of these organic, but it was directly correlated to the viral post. So once we didn't have that viral post actively being viral anymore, it was like, oh my God, the number skyrocketed. And like the vast majority of followers turned out to be coming from ads. And I mentioned earlier, like sometimes they change the wording. Instagram's always doing little updates. Recently, at the time of recording, it now shows you in notifications when followers come from ads from boosting, which we didn't have at the time we're talking about now.
Yeah.
So now we do have that, and we can see that like the vast majority of new followers we can directly see come from different ads on different posts. I like that post. We can see that they're now in the profile liking other posts. It's a much clearer journey now.
Yeah,
that's great, because before they introduced that feature, you were pretty much going off of inference as far as followers and boosting.
It's still a bit of an inference of like which particular reel it was from. Like if we have two ads running at once, it doesn't tell you like it was this ad that did it, but it was a ad. Confirmed. And yeah, so that had a big effect. And just to like clarify, it was paused for like entire month of our 6-week period. So 2/3. Our boosting was.
Well, that was in January. So I think.
Yeah, it was in the second 6-week period, which is why like part of our growth slow, we were like on the upward trend. We were like, we're going to maintain that upward trend, but then we took out the viral slowdown, and then we also took out the pause, the boosting budget. That went down again. We were hit by the seasonality, so that's put us into like that started the slow, and then we didn't get back out of it because we were just kind of like, didn't have that like extra boost behind it.
I remember you were consulting with me and the paid team as well, kind of weighing your options, whether or not to boost, whether it made sense to boost, run a full campaign. And I did want to just bring up the importance of basically the difference between the methodologies and why boosting ultimately did make sense with this account as compared to a full campaign, where boosting is extremely limited with the features. It's extremely simplistic, and you have to look to lean on the simplicity of it as a strength for something of getting in people and getting traffic to your account and to your pages, which is exactly what you're aiming to do, as compared to running a full campaign. Gets a lot more rigorous. It sets you up to run a lot more analysis and gives you a lot of opportunities to optimize. While that is very important, that's not for every account, not for every client, and not for every budget. So I did want to just kind of point out that importance of choosing the right methodologies. Yeah, because to your point about budget, the barrier to entry on a boost, best practices, a boost versus an ad campaign are very different, right? Yeah, that was one of the first things you told us.
Yeah, and we kind of were learning about how it worked, and found out it like worked pretty differently in general. We definitely found some efficiencies as we were working through it.
Almost immediately. I think it was like our second boost. We already found something different that was working better.
Yeah, and we started, we covered our kind of initial audience discovery in part 1, where we went for too niche an audience because the Instagram way overestimates the reach potential of an audience, like by a lot, I will say. So that's something to keep in mind if you're looking to boost yourself. Like, their estimations are very high for how many people are in an audience that will see it. And so we went too niche. We went back out a little bit. And however, for like a long time, we weren't doing the suggested audience because that is like generally a big no-no in paid world.
Depending on the client and the goal, you want to start off by defining a very a demographic and then kind of expanding from there, where in a lot of those scenarios, having a suggested demographic will typically put out the campaign to maybe some leads that aren't nearly as qualified.
Yeah, so we were definitely testing within targeted audiences at first.
Yeah.
And then we were like, okay, like we've tried out these different audiences. Let's try a suggested audience because we haven't done it yet.
Well, we also wanted to wait. The suggested audience is based on current followers specifically. So we wanted to wait until we reached a certain threshold of followers just to give it enough data on who was following us.
But that was like a pretty major difference in efficiency and was definitely worth it. It cut our cost per profile view down to like either a third or a fourth of what it originally was. So we were looking at like 20 to 30 cents instead of like around 80 to $1, which is where we were before. So way more profile visits for less money. And I think because our content is so relatable to so many people, like it had a much better chance of working like that, working well. And we, as far as we can tell, there's definitely a correlation to the followers, growing, follower growth, and our ads that we were running.
Yes.
So although we can't like positively define it based off like Instagram being like, this gave you this many followers, there is a correlation there. That has gone up and down, as Rachel kind of said before, with our following, not our following, with our boosting. But that has like continued and reflected with like our finding efficiencies and increasing our profile visits as well. It's been proportionate. Yeah, that's some about audience. And then there are definitely some differences in like spend duration, like stuff that we found. I think we were cognizant of generally paid like the rules, like at least 3 days. It's like the smallest possible. I think we kind of started out usually around 3 days just because like that's a good time period that worked for us with like the amount of spend. Yeah, it was just like a nice solid like even 15 over per day for 3 days is like 45. And we were like mapping out our budget. We're like, that's nice.
Okay, so three days per boost.
Yeah.
Okay.
It gave us the flexibility to boost more posts too.
Yeah. And we did try a 1 day one. We found out that was definitely not the best move.
Well, that was for the Super Bowl related one.
Yeah.
So it kind of made sense to just do a 1 day blast boost instead of like stretching it out over 3 days or a week, because it was every hour ticking by like slowly losing relevance.
Yeah.
But it's not, if it wasn't a very, very time sensitive post, I wouldn't recommend doing it again.
And it still like did fine.
It did.
Especially compared with this, the spend and efficiency compared to our other posts that we were running before the suggested audience thing. But it definitely wasn't as optimized as the other ones we were running recently. So it was a good test to find out and learn about like, relevance. And maybe, who knows, like if it had gone for 3 days, maybe it also wouldn't have performed great because it would have lost relevance as it went as well.
Right.
But I think we've definitely decided that like 3 days is kind of our sweet spot. We did some different time period lengths between like a week. I think we ran a 2-week one. Maybe not. Never mind. We tried like some different ones. some different links, but we would kind of try to divide them out afterwards, see if how the kind of spend to days, like if you kept that and increased it or like put it down to like compare more directly the numbers, and they kind of stayed steady. So we haven't seen any major differences between days that spread out amongst. It seems to be more related to the spend.
Right. It's very transparent that the more you spend, the more you get.
Yeah.
There's no like secret, only spend this amount and it'll do better than if you magically spend more. Like that doesn't exist. At least from what we've seen.
Like spending less over more days to be like try to get like more like quality people perhaps, because you're like, they're picking the cream of the crop to show it to. One might theorize that doesn't really seem to be the case. And you can see very clearly in the way they estimate reach as well. If you increase the days, you really don't see that much of an increase in the audience that it will reach. But if you increase the spend, it has a significant effect on how many people it estimates it'll reach. So that's what we found. And yeah, we've been sticking to it, and it's been a good sweet spot. Of course, for like a modest spend, we're trying to phase out of too much dependency on boosting and keep it for just like an overall growth boost to help like reach some people, or maybe spike some content that we're trying to attract followers for.
Right.
Yeah.
Most recently, we've decided to kind of dedicate it to what's already organically doing well. Before, it was like if we would see a post was doing really well organically, we would almost let it sit just to observe how it does organically. Now it's like, no, if it's popular, let's just get it to as many people as possible. Like, we don't need to let something just sit and be like this perfect little organic situation. So yeah, everything's evolving all the time.
Right.
And for the most part, that does check out, as far as we are an account that is going for work-based humor and a very broad audience, you know?
Yeah.
If it were a scenario...
Do you work? We could be right for you.
Do you like funnies?
Do you send emails?
Yeah.